Yeah, it's funny when I say when it's told that I have 7 children, because depending on where I am, you either get people coming up to me. Up north, you have people coming up saying, "Oh, son, you're just getting started." Down south, it's a collective gasp. So, anyway, I'm also in a group called Romans. I don't know if any of you heard of us. We've actually played here a while back. So I'd like to start off with a song. And I offer this as a little bit of, I don't know, advice maybe. Hey honey, have you gained some weight in your rear end? The dress you wear reminds me of my old girlfriend. And where'd you get those shoes? I think they're pretty lame. Would you stop talking, 'cause I'm trying to watch the game? If you're a man who wants to live a long and happy life, these are the things you don't say to your wife. I planned a hunting trip next week on your birthday. I didn't ask you, 'cause I knew it'd be okay. Go make some dinner while I watch this fishing show. I taped it over our old wedding video. If you're a man who wants to live a long and happy life, these are the things you don't say to your wife. Your cooking is okay, but not like Mother makes. The diamond in your ring I bought you, it's a fake. Your eyes look puffy, dear. Are you feeling ill? Happy anniversary, I bought you a treadmill. If you're a man who wants to live a long and happy life, these are the things you don't say to your wife. If you're a man who doesn't want to get killed with a knife, these are the things you don't say to your wife. Let me pull up I love technology. I'm still trying to get used to it here. I'm going to pull up my talk, but I do have to say that I was preparing for a 3-hour talk, and then Father Satish told me that it was 45 minutes, so I had to cut part of it out. I cut out the part about how to have great sex in marriage. I even had homework for you, but don't worry, it's not a big deal. Well, thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to be walking around. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. My wife says I have a big mouth, so I figured this will work. I've been working for Marriage Works for 7.5, almost 8 years, and I love what I do. I also, on the side, do marriage therapy. So I've seen a lot of couples come through my doors. One of the things that I advocate for, I have written a marriage curriculum because one of the things that I'm trying to advocate for is more ongoing marriage enrichment at the parish level. Because one of the things that I'm very tired of is seeing couples come in through my doors when it's almost too late. They come in and they say, everything's falling apart, we're on the brink of divorce, what can you do for us? And I'm thinking, let me get my magic wand. And I will work with anybody, and I'll work tooth and nail with them. But my goal is to get people away from that, to start early on, to help people. Because one of the things that I have learned is that the best thing that we can give our kids and our family is a strong and healthy marriage. But today, too many marriages are dying. And just because we're Catholic doesn't make us immune. It's happening at a phenomenal rate. But we are also winning the battle in many ways too. One of the things, as I teach classes, I love my wife because she's got the pearls of wisdom that sometimes she has to, shove it into my head so I get it. But we were teaching a class, and one of the things that she said just really came to life for me. She said, when we're having marital issues, when we're having marital difficulty, then ultimately we are not free. We are not free to be the husband, the wife, the father, the mother that God intends us to be. Because we are so caught up in that battle with each other. We're so caught up with the concerns and that division. And let me explain why. One of the things that I write in this curriculum, it's called Discovering Our Deepest Desire. And the reason I wrote it that way is to get people, desire. Yeah, that's a good title. But the other point with it was, I heard this saying from St. Augustine. Everybody heard of St. Augustine? I love his writings. He says, the deepest desire of every human heart is to be seen and to see another in that same way. Listen again. The deepest desire of every human heart is to be seen and to see another in that same way. That's why we long to be in relationship with others. That's why we love to be in relationship with our spouse, because it's meant to be that safe place where we have committed for life. Not until we fall out of love, but until death do us part. To be there to walk with them through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it gets ugly at times, doesn't it? It gets bad. But there's a lot of good too. I don't want to paint this bad picture. And so we commit, and hopefully we have that safety of that commitment to say, here's who I am. Walk this road with me as I grow. And marriage is meant to make us, I love this, marriage is meant to make us something more than we could ever be on our own. Because if we were good in and of ourselves, then why get married? The beauty is that in marriage, hopefully we're challenged to do something more. And opposites what? I'm going to get you involved here, so get ready. Opposites attract. Do you ever think of why? Why do opposites attract?
You see quality in someone else that you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, cool. She actually, like my wife, she's one that she's a spitfire. She's Italian. And she'll tell anybody, yeah. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I was telling Spencer this, I can be that little wet noodle sometimes. Oh, they just cheated us out of $100, no big deal. My wife's over here saying, yeah, get that $100 back, and you get in there and be a man. Yes, dear, I'll do that. But she pushes me in ways, and I push her in ways too, so that we can become something better than we could ever be on our own. And that's what it's meant to be. Okay? And the other thing is that because opposites attract, the very things that we fall in love with early on become the very things that do what? Drive us nuts! Wait! Oh, let me give you one. From my perspective, I am one who has to be not only early, but like 20 minutes early to things. And guess what my wife is? Yeah, as long as we get there before the homily starts, we're good to go. Why get there early? Because then you just sit there forever. Can you see the clash of the titans happening here? So what happens? We get in the car, the kids are in the back seat. Where's Mom? I don't know where Mom's in. She's still trying to do 5 more things before we get to church tonight. And then what happens is she gets in the car all happy because she got her 5 things done. And then I get going on the highway, and what I start doing? Speeding. So she goes, why are you going so fast? Can you see where it's going? Yeah, okay. So the deepest desire of every human heart is to be seen and to see another in that same way. That's what marriage is meant to be. But let me go a little bit deeper, because when I dug more into that, there's more to it. It's not just that my wife's name is Stephanie, so when you hear Stephanie, that's who I'm talking about. It's not that I just want to know the depth of who Stephanie is. That's part of it. But when I came to realize what St. Augustine was really saying here, is that at the beginning, when God blew His breath into man and into woman, He blew His very essence. And God's very essence is good, it's spirit, it's love. It's love. And when you have God's love in you, you long to share it with another. Okay? So in a sense, when you start to discover this deepest part of another person and you have that love there, in a sense you're experiencing God. That's the beauty of marriage. But what complicates that? Sin. Us. Yeah, the fall. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Eve. Yeah, the fall keeps causing that sin to come into place, and we start to break down that love, and we saw it in the fall of man, where when sin entered in, they started to cover themselves up. Why did they cover themselves up? They were ashamed. Why were they ashamed? They were naked. But do you ever think of why are they doing that? Because they sinned. They messed up. Why are they covering? God's seen it before. What it came down to is before they had this free gift that they were giving to each other. And now it was complicated with sin, and it was one of these where I'm taking. And that they were afraid that they were being looked upon, not in love, but in lust, as something to be used. This happens still today. One of the great things, one of the very difficult things I learned in my own marriage that really defined me in wanting to do this work was where early on, and I tell people this, I'm ashamed of it, but it happened. I got into pornography back in college, and because of it, I had a skewed view of what relationships really were meant to be. And this crack in our foundation came out later in our marriage, 10 years into our marriage, to where my wife looked at me one day, or I was, we were battling, and I was at my wit's end. And finally, after going to confession, God bless confession. If you haven't been to confession, go to confession. It's a great thing. Because it gave me the grace to really do what I needed to do. I came home, I went downstairs, and I looked at my wife and I said, "What's going on? I'm done, I'm tired, I can't figure out what's going on here." And she looked at me and she said, "Do you really want to know?" Guys, when you hear that, does that make you feel comfortable? No, everything in me wanted to say, "No, I really don't want to know. I'll see you later. I'm going up and getting dessert." But I said, "Yeah, I do." And she proceeded to tell me how I was not that knight in shining armor that she had needed. That she was praying to fall back in love with me. That she was tired of feeling hunted. Did you hear me? Hunted. And I didn't realize what that meant until I started to dig into the theology of the body and understand that. And I had a priest say this to me. He said, you've got to get this right, because your marriage is part of your sanctification walk. This is not something to bide our time here on earth. This is part of our sanctification and learning how to love. And he said, you've got to get this right. He said, and as I started to read this theology of the body, a concept came to me. It said that you can lust after your wife. And I thought, that's stupid. Of course I want to find my wife, attractive. I want to find her sexy. Too much information. But I finally started to realize of what they were saying there is that I was seeing her not as a gift of God made in the likeness and image of God, but as an object for my own pleasure, for my own use. This happens so often in marriage today. We don't fall out of this first section. I do 3 sections here. I should have set it up before that, but I wanted to precursor that. This first one I call the big no-no. N-O-K-N-O-W. Because we long to be seen, we long to see, we long to know God, we long to know. And sin enters in and we shut off, and we block out, and we guard our hearts. And it happens in marriage. We don't fall out of love. We fall out of knowing. And then the more we fall out of knowing, the more we distance ourselves from each other. Have you ever seen this where a couple's been married for 25 years, 30 years, and they end up getting a divorce because the kids leave? Why? And they say, I don't know who this person is anymore. Marriage is meant to be a series, and I call it this, a marriage is meant to be a series of multiple marriages. I'm not talking polygamy. What I'm talking about is that at every stage, you have to grow in knowing who this person is and recommit your life to them. You can't be falling out of knowing who this person is and come home someday and figure out, who are you? Who are you becoming? And so, I say this, when I got married, I knew who my wife was. We spent an inordinate amount of times talking on the phone. Hi, how are you doing? Up till late night. Oh, you're so beautiful. All these, my mama used to say, you guys talk way too much. I thought, no, this is good, because now I know who this person is. So I knew who she was when I got married. But I didn't know at that time what she'd be like with one child, let alone 7 children. I didn't know what she'd be like with, when I leave the toilet seat up, or throw my clothes on the floor and not in the hamper, and so, or through, those who've had kids, sleep deprivation. Isn't that hell? Yeah. And so, we have to stay in the know of who this person is, who they are becoming, because they're not the same person. And their fears and their dreams back here are not necessarily their same fears and their dreams today. I had a couple that came in that wanted therapy from me. And I'll never forget, this gentleman said, and he admitted it, he said, I don't know who my wife is, and I've come to realize that because now she's talking to someone else, and it finally woke me up. Another guy she was talking to. He said, I finally complimented her on these jeans, and she says, I've had these jeans for 2 years. He said, I didn't know. We fall out of knowing each other. So it's important that we stay in the know. How do we fall out of knowing each other? We fall out of knowing each other through distractions. What are the distractions that we have in our life? Work. Children. And that's a hard one to say, but it's true. Children. They're great, but they have a way of sucking life out of you. I love my kids. Don't get me wrong. I love my kids. What else? What else distracts us? TV, but hobbies, computers, Facebook, Twitter. My wife took my phone, or I'd show you. That's one of the biggest destroyers of marriages today is our cell phones. We're so connected with everybody that we're not truly connecting with anybody. It's like, you can be in the middle of a great conversation. Oh, hold on a second, I got to... And then, what were we talking about? And what does that show that person? So distractions. The other thing that's causing a difficulty is addictions. Addictions, which can be distractions. And another one I will throw out here, just to be a bummer, but it's true, is pornography. Pornography is killing our culture today. And it doesn't just find those who are looking for it. It finds those who are not even looking for it. And there's such things as soft porn. How many of us, go to get on our email and this big rear end pops up at us saying, would you like to lose weight? And you're like, geez, get off there. Pornography is killing us because we're going into an unreal world and we're comparing our spouse to that person. So, distractions. One of the great things that I learned, let me make sure I'm keeping on timer. One of the great things I've learned is if you know what God wants this deep desire, we have this deep desire, then you got to know how Satan, who doesn't want it to work, attacks us. And this was a great realization for me. First thing Satan does is he distracts us. Keeps us busy. Oh, I got to do this. I got to run the kids here. Oh, the kids have to be in this sport. Oh, we got to do this. We got to do that. I'll never forget talking with the group up north about my marriage program. I said, this is 12 weeks long, and you could just see the people shut down at that point going, 12 weeks? Oh, we can't commit to that. Our lives are just too crazy, 12 weeks. And I stopped them and I said, let me ask you. I said, what's the most important thing you can do for your kids? It's a healthy and good marriage, right? And yet you will spend 5, 6, 7, 10 hours a week driving your kids all over God's creation to all these different things, but you can't give your spouse 2 hours for 12 weeks to grow back into love, grow back into knowing each other? And they looked at me and said, that's a good point. That's all we're talking about, is a commitment to that. So he distracts us. And then when we're distracted and we're not talking with each other, he starts to lie to us. This is what I call the fill-in-the-blank syndrome. When we're not talking, we try and figure out what's going on in our spouse's mind by reading their body language. How well does that work? Oh, she must be mad at me. She must be mad at me. Oh, there she goes doing that again. Oh, well, I'll get her back. And we all play these mental games if we're not talking to each other. So he lies to us. And then the last thing is, because he's distracted us, now he's lying to us, he starts to create, he doesn't create, he encourages us to create divisive patterns where we're not talking to each other. We're sarcastic to each other. We roll our eyes at each other. And it starts to create this divide between us. And that's when I see people come into my office. The divide is so wide. Let me go into the second part of this. I had a revelation, and I thought, I should have known this. I don't know why it was just all of a sudden out of the blue, just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was working with a couple. And from the moment they got in my office, they were back and forth. Well, he did this. Well, she did this. And did this and that and the other thing. And I can't believe it. 20 years ago, he did this at our wedding. And that. And ever since then, and they're going back and forth. And I, stop. Let's, calm down. Let's walk through this. And what I realized from that was that, if I'm working with people who've been divided, I got to help them meet back in the middle. Part of it is knowing each other, but part of it is dealing with all this garbage too, because there's so much under the rug. And sometimes I realize that I can make $1 million off of one couple just dealing with all the stuff under the rug. Okay, let's deal with this one this week. Oh, this is going to take 20 years, so get out your checkbook. We'll get a payment plan. No, I don't do that. So what I came to realize is that when I looked at this couple, I said, let me stop you. I said, let me ask you a question. I know we could sit here forever and talk about who's to blame. And I'm sure somebody may have more blame than the other. And we can go back and forth, and maybe we can come up with who's to blame. I said, but we need to get back to what God's calling us to. And I asked him a question. I looked at the guy and I said, let me ask you. You may not like each other right now, but do you love your spouse? And he said, well, yeah, that's why we came. And I said, well then, let me ask both of you, would you be willing, if I gave you the opportunity to starve your spouse to death, would you? And they looked at me like I was nuts. And we're paying you for what? I said, no, bear with me. Come on. Would you starve this person to death? And they both said, no, that's stupid. Even if I'm mad at her, I still love her, I'm still at him, I would never starve him to death. I said, but that's what you're doing emotionally. You're starving them to death emotionally. And the other thing I came to realize is that when we are young, it's all about who? Me, my toy, give it to me. Oh, especially when you have 7, they're battling, everybody's, And I love it at dinner time because everybody's vying for that last piece of pizza even though they've got 20 on their plate because someone else might get that one. Me. And then somewhere along the lines in 18, 19, some 20s, some in the 30s, we start to find someone that we really fall in love with, and who does it become about? Them. We go to the end of the world for them. Honey, where do you want me to go? You need me to go down to the store, down 20 miles to get you something? I'll drive down there for you. You do all these things for them because why? You're trying to win them over. You're going to win them over by get it yourself. No, you do things for them. And then somewhere in marriage, somewhere along in marriage, it goes back to what? Me. I'm not getting my needs met. When do I get to go out with the guys? Well, I don't know. When do I get to go out with the girls? When are you going to take the kids? I've taken the kids. How many times, back and forth. Me. And it came to my attention that We are called to be, this is the second point. The first is the big no-no, that we fall out of knowing. The second point is we are called to be in what's called a Eucharistic marriage. A Eucharistic marriage. We go to Mass every day, and I don't think sometimes we connect marriage with the great beauty of the Mass. And there's so much that intersect. And there's so many ways I'd love to go off on that, but let me keep with this. What happens in the Mass? What does Christ do for us? Gives Himself up for us. He becomes present to us. He what? He provides for us. He sacrifices Himself. He becomes little. And He feeds us. Did you catch that? He feeds us. Because He knows we need it. Not just the food. He knows we need the graces that come along with it. He knows that we are desperate in this rotten, at sometimes, world that we live in, to find that guidance, to find that light. And He feeds us for this journey that we're on. So He feeds us, and we go to do what? You can talk loud. It's okay. I know it's getting late. We eat, and we are called into what's called Eucharista. Eucharista means what? Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. God feeds, and we thank Him. And in marriage today, it's mine. I'm not getting enough. Give to me. And I'm trying to help these couples say, we can sit here and play the blame game all you want, but we can't fix the past. We can't change the past. What I want to do is take you into a new future. And it means figuring out the patterns that aren't working, and how do we feed each other? Because we're starving each other to death. We need to figure out, we talk about this. Have you ever heard this? We agree to disagree. I hate that term. Because all it means is we agree to just bury it under the rug, and hopefully it'll never surface again. And we end up tripping over it many times, and oh, that's there again, and da-da-da-da-da. And so what this means, when it calls us to find that middle ground, it doesn't mean that I give half, you give half, we meet in the middle, and then, because I use this image of a bridge. So if I come halfway on the bridge, and you come halfway on the bridge, where do we go from there? Into the water. Right? That's not where we want to be. So really what it is understanding what they need on their side of the bridge. They understand what we need on our side of the bridge, and we cross over at times the sacrificial part. I put my needs back there, and I come over and I feed you. And then I go back over and you come over and you feed me. But it's not good enough just to feed each other unless we are also what? Being fed and being Eucharista. Which is what? Thankful. Often in my classes, one of the activities we do is we ask people to write a my Latin is bad, mea gratia, my gratitude, my thanksgiving. And I encourage people, think about the things that you are thankful for that your spouse gives to you. Because too often we think about what? All the things they're not doing. They're not taking out the garbage. They're not cleaning the dishes. They're not... So we are called to be Eucharistic and have Eucharistic marriages where we feed each other and we are thankful. Because what I'm finding is that the more we keep grabbing from each other, it just sucks the life out of us and we become very bitter about it. And I see so many couples doing this because we're dying. We're dying over here. Please, I'm starving. Give me something. So we're grabbing. But imagine if I say enough. Okay, here. What is it that you need? Let me feed you. She says, thank you. I needed that. And then she comes to me and does the same thing. That's what marriage is meant to be. We feed each other and we're thankful for it. But we've lost that today. So the third part is what I call read and feed the need. I've got a goofiness about me, so bear with it. The need to read and feed the need. So what I talk about in here is in the classes that I do, I help people communicate. Some people are communicating fine, some have some, you know, the communication tool that I use is one that I put together. It's nothing phenomenal. I just call it the Road to Calvary communication technique. And I have this one person who's speaking and one person who's listening. And you wouldn't believe how hard that is for some couples. Because ultimately when they're speaking, especially when your spouse is speaking something you don't like about you, you want to do what? Ignore, yeah, or interrupt. I don't like that. Stop. Or retaliate. Oh, well, yeah, the other day you. Or we minimize. Okay? So in this, the person who's holding the crucifix. And what I say to people is, yeah, sometimes you're going to hear stuff that you don't really like. Look at the cross, because remember Christ. Christ did what? He walked the road to Calvary, what? Screaming? Silently. Was he guilty? No. Who did he do it for? Us. So are you willing to be silent, to really hear what's going on in the heart of your spouse, even if it means hearing something that's going to be painful? It's going to be hard to hear, but knowing that this is where we're going to get to the root of it. Too often today we deal with the dandelions and not the roots. And that's what we've got to deal with. So this communication, one talks and one then reflects back what they've heard. Without speculation, without any, but just truly hear, because too often we don't listen to that person. And then after one exchange, we pass the crucifix and it goes the other way. They talk. So we get to understanding what their perception is. Once they get to that perception, then I move them into talking about needs. What is it that you need? Because ultimately, you know, I love this. People say, my spouse he nags at me all the time. Or he nags at me, or he's just belligerent with me all the time. And I had one of my good friends come to me because he's struggling in his marriage. And he said, I don't know what she wants. I don't know what she needs. She keeps saying all these things and I don't know what she needs. And I said, what is she saying? And he proceeded to tell me these different things. And I'm like, dude, it's so easy. Normally, when you hear someone's nagging at the other person, ultimately what they're saying is, I need something, and here's what I need. But the problem is A, we don't listen, and B, we don't do a very good job sometimes of explaining what that need is. So what I get people doing is talking about what that need is. And not only what that need is, but breaking it down into bite-sized bits that can be done. And we got to get out of this realm of, well, if he or if she really loved me, they would know what I need. Have you heard that one? Sometimes we're dense. I'm dense sometimes. I'd spell it out for me. But sometimes it's because we talk cryptic. Sometimes we're in the heat of the emotion and we're not really spelling it out. So let's ask, what are some needs that people have? Affection. And it doesn't mean you specifically, just people in general, because I'm not asking you to share anything that, but just people in general. What is it that you need? Affection? Food? Support?
Words of affirmation.
To be heard? What?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation?
Reliability.
Reliability?
Time.
What? Time? Solitude. Yes. Men, we need our nothing box now and then. I'd love to go in talking about men and women's brains, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah, these are the needs that we have, and there's many more. But the question is let's talk about one of those. So your spouse comes to you, and they say, I love this one over. What'd you say, reliability? Honey, I need you to be more reliable. So, play with me here on this one. So you hear your spouse say that, I need you to be more reliable. So you ready now to go meet that need of mine and help me get it met? Why not? I just told you.
Pretty vague.
Pretty vague?
Yeah.
Reliability. Being reliable. What do you need to know?
What specifically am I not being reliable with?
Oh, okay, you want specifics. Okay. Being on time. If we could be on time for things. You know, again, I work with people because we want to get out of that, you're always late for versus, here's what I need. I need to be on time for something. And we talk from I statements versus you. You. I need to be on time. I need for you to help me be on time for things. Okay. What do you mean be on time for things?
15 minutes before it starts.
15 minutes before it starts. You see how we've taken reliability and we started to break it out. It's being on time for something. 15 minutes early is what... Oh, well, that was my need, wasn't it? I just switched that on you there. That's okay. But sometimes we say those things to each other and think about that. You need to be more reliable. Or I wish, like my wife said, I needed a knight in shining armor and you haven't been it. I need you to be my knight in shining armor. Guys, you read it? You know what that means? I didn't either. Sword, yeah. Give me that sword. I'll show you I'm a knight. And find me a dragon somewhere. I'll slay it. But knight in shining armor. We haven't had them around in centuries. I don't know what you want me to do. So it indicates that we need to ask what that means. Which means we have to have good communication. So a good communication tool if we're having trouble. But the other thing is to ask about that need. What does that need look like? And broken down. So if they say time, I need time. Who said time? You said time. I'm picking on you. How much time do you need?
20 minutes.
Huh?
20 minutes.
20 minutes a week?
A day.
20 minutes a day. Doing, just listening to each other? So you need solitude time alone, 20 minutes. Okay. And if the house is burning down, do you want me to come in and say something? No. Okay. We're clear. We got that. That's all we're talking about here. Because if we are going to feed, we have to know the need. And we need to know what it looks like, what it's broken down so that we can truly meet it. Because if I say I'm hungry and you give me snails, am I going to be happy? Oh, I'm not hungry for snails. What are you hungry? Well, here, let me give you some asparagus. No, I don't want asparagus. You got to know what they're needing, what they need to be fed. You know, I love that about pregnancy is a lot of times their cravings is all about something the body needs and the baby needs. So it indicates that we need to be detectives of our spouse. We need to understand what their need is, what it looks like, and have that interest not in only knowing what it is, but a willingness then to go forth sacrificially and feed. To have that Eucharistic marriage of feeding one another. And then when your spouse feeds you, that you say thank you. One of the great, and I point people into this, if you want to know a great tool for how to feed, one way, this is not the answer to all. How many people have heard of the five love languages?
Yes.
You've heard of these. For those who haven't, let me explain. The 5 love languages are these. I wrote them down just in case. I know these. I just, in front of people. First one is gifts. Giving gifts, receiving gifts. Number 2 is quality time. 3 is touch. 4 is words of affirmation. And 5 is acts of service. And what Gary Chapman says is, we have this love bank. That's non-technical terms. Technically what happens is, when there's stress, we have this high cortisol level that raises in the body. And we get all tense and it gets us ready to fight or flight or freeze. And we're stressed. And one of the ways that you can bring that down for your spouse is to feed that love language for them. Because it shows them what? That you care. You know what they need. You're going to get. So, I didn't understand these before in my marriage. And it caused me problems. When I learned this, I'm like, aha, I got it now. Because my love language, and here's the rule, tends to be that whatever your love language is, that's what you tend to give. Mine is touch. So you always see me patting people on the back, giving them hugs and, shaking their hand. And That's my love language. So I go home to my wife with 7 kids, and I hug all over and kiss all over, and do you think that that's her love language? No! She's been touched all day long! Get off of me! What do you think her love language is? What?
Affirmation.
Acts of service. Acts of service. Get on it, clean the dishes, change the diaper, help with the yard work, and then we'll talk about touch, buddy. So it's understanding, and what's been neat about this is that there's a part of it that's sacrificial. Because when I come home, I don't feel like washing the dishes. Some great realization that I had, I think my father-in-law learned this. I don't know if it ever penetrated his brain, but he shared this with me, and I love this. He said, it really made a difference when I understood that, I work a one shift, and I come home and I just want to, pass out. My wife works a double, if not a triple. Even when they're stay-at-home moms, because they work while you're at work, and then you come home and they're still working with the kids, and sometimes at night they're still working with the kids. And so I realized, this has got to be something that we do together. But she also sacrifices, because touch is not her thing, but she does that, where she'll touch me on the toe, or she'll give me that hug. And then there's that thank you. Thank you for feeding me. Let me finish with this story from Mother Teresa. And then any questions that you have, I'd be more than happy to answer. And then there's a point where you can talk with your spouse. I've got questions, and Spencer will hand those out as I read this. There are questions for you to spend time talking now and talking later. Don't feel like you have to answer these all tonight or this week, but spend some time doing this. And let me also say that getting back to knowing who your spouse is means that you have to go on dates. So many people don't. You have to go on dates. You have to spend that time. So spend a date and talk about these questions. There's just 3 questions, but they can be kind of deep. There's also a prayer on there that I offer to you for you to pray with your spouse. And then I've also given some scripture readings for you to also read and think about. But let me leave you with this thought from Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa once said, people feel that they need to go across the ocean to a third world country in order to care for the impoverished. The poor in Calcutta have very little, but they at least share what little they have. They are poor in things, but rich in love. She stated, we don't need to go that far to serve the impoverished. They are all around us. Their impoverishment is in the lack of being loved. If you want to know how to find them, look around you. They are the people sitting right next to you. I thank you for your time. Are there any questions? That's okay. If there's no questions, we can go right to the questions on the sheet. But thank you very much. I'll be around for a little bit if you do have other questions. So thank you.